Cliff Branch died, without ever hearing his name in Canton. How does a man who won 3 Super Bowls, outran entire defenses, and became the heartbeat of a franchise get denied the one honor he dreamed of until it was too late? Cliff Branch was a legend, a blur of speed and soul, but the Pro Football Hall of Fame turned its back on him for decades. Why did Canton ignore a man who changed football forever? His story isn't just about glory, it's about triumphs, heartbreaks, and a fight for justice that came too late. Let's dive into the life of Cliff Branch, the Raiders icon who deserved so much more. The Speed King, Cliff Branch wasn't just fast, he was born to leave everyone else in the dust. Growing up in Houston's Sunnyside neighborhood in the 1950s, he was a wiry kid with a spark in his eyes and legs that never stopped moving. By 6th grade, he was outrunning teenagers in local foot races, clutching a box of Chinese checkers as his prize while the crowd cheered his name. Sunnyside was tough, a working-class community where dreams were hard-won, but Cliff's family gave him everything they had. His parents, Clifford Sr. and Leola, instilled a fire in him: work hard, stay humble, and run like the wind. Those early races weren't just games, they were the first steps of a legend. At Wharton High School, Cliff's speed became the talk of Texas. He wasn't just the fastest kid in Houston, he was one of the fastest in the state, dominating track meets and leaving football defenders grasping at air. On the gridiron, he was a dual threat, catching passes and returning kicks with a flair that made coaches rewrite their playbooks. His nickname, Speed Kills, started to spread, whispered by opponents who knew they couldn't keep up. By his senior year, he was a local hero, but Cliff had his eyes on something bigger, a stage where his speed could shine under brighter lights. In 1968, Cliff landed at the University of Colorado, ready to take his talents to the next level. Colorado wasn't just a school, it was a proving ground where Cliff became a two-sport phenomenon. On the track, he was untouchable. In 1970, he clocked a jaw-dropping 10.0 seconds in the 100-meter dash at the NCAA Championships, tying an NCAA record and earning a place in history. That's not just fast, that's world-class, the kind of speed that could have taken him to the Olympics. His coach called him a human rocket, and the name stuck. But track was only half the story. On the football field, Cliff was a game changer. As a wide receiver and return specialist, he turned punts and kickoffs into instant highlight reels. In just 2 seasons, he scored 8 return touchdowns, 4 on punts, 4 on kickoffs, a Colorado record that still stands today. One game saw him take a kickoff 97 yards to the house, leaving defenders so far behind they looked like they were running in slow motion. His speed wasn't just a weapon, it was a promise. Give Cliff a sliver of daylight, and he was gone. Teammates said he didn't run, he flew. Off the field, Cliff was as grounded as they come. He wasn't the guy chasing fame, he was the guy sharing his lunch with a teammate or cracking jokes in the locker room. His humility came from Sunnyside, where his parents taught him that speed doesn't mean anything without heart. That heart would carry him to the NFL, where he'd become a legend, but not without a fight. The Prince of the Raiders. When Cliff Branch stepped into the NFL in 1972, he didn't just join the Oakland Raiders, he became their secret weapon, a bolt of lightning in silver and black. Drafted in the 4th round, he was a steal that would redefine what a wide receiver could do. The Raiders weren't your average team. Led by the rebellious owner, Al Davis, they lived by a simple creed: just win, baby. Their black jerseys, rowdy fans, and in-your-face style made them the NFL's outlaws, and Cliff fit right in. Under the guidance of quarterback Ken Stabler and coach John Madden, Branch transformed from a college star into a professional game changer. His speed wasn't just an asset, it was a revolution. Branch's first big moment came in the 1976 season, culminating in Super Bowl XI. The Raiders faced the Minnesota Vikings, a defensive powerhouse, but Cliff made them look like they were stuck in quicksand. He hauled in 4 passes for 84 yards, including a 41-yard bomb that left Vikings cornerbacks grasping at air. That play wasn't just a catch, it was a statement. Cliff Branch was here to dominate. The Raiders won 32-14, securing their first Super Bowl title, and Branch's ring was the first of 3 he'd earn. But 1 ring wasn't enough for a man with his hunger. Over the next decade, Branch became the heart of the Raiders' offense. In Super Bowl XV in 1980, he torched the Philadelphia Eagles, catching 5 passes for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a 29-yard score that sealed the game. The Raiders won 27-10, and Branch's performance earned him praise as one of the game's biggest threats. By Super Bowl XVIII in 1983, he added another ring, hauling in 6 catches for 94 yards against the Washington Redskins in a 38-9 blowout. 3 Super Bowls, 3 rings, and a reputation as a clutch performer who thrived under pressure. His playoff stats were unreal: 73 catches for 1,289 yards, a record at the time, and 5 touchdown grabs in title games. But Branch wasn't just about the big games. Over 14 seasons, he racked up 501 receptions, 8,685 yards, and 67 touchdowns, averaging a jaw-dropping 17.3 yards per catch. That average wasn't just good, it was elite, a testament to his ability to turn short passes into long gains. Teammates like Marcus Allen called him a destroyer, saying he'd run circles around today's NFL defenses. His chemistry with quarterbacks like Stabler and Jim Plunkett was electric, built on trust and timing. One play in 1977 saw him catch a 42-yard touchdown against the Denver Broncos, burning their all-pro cornerback Louis Wright so badly that Wright later admitted, "I never saw him coming." Off the field, Branch was the Raiders' soul. He wasn't the loud guy demanding attention. He was the one signing autographs for hours, buying dinners for fans, or mentoring rookies like Tim Brown. His loyalty to the silver and black was unshakable, even when the team moved to Los Angeles in 1982. Fans called him the Prince of the Raiders, a nod to his grace and grit. But for all his glory, a shadow loomed. The Pro Football Hall of Fame, the ultimate honor for NFL greats, seemed to have no room for Cliff Branch. Why would they ignore a man with his resume? That's where the story gets messy. Abandoned by the Hall of Fame. Cliff Branch had it all: 3 Super Bowl rings, record-breaking playoff stats, and a legacy as one of the NFL's most electrifying receivers. So why was the Pro Football Hall of Fame acting like he didn't exist? For decades, Branch's name was left off the gold jackets, a snub that felt more like a betrayal than an oversight. His stats weren't just good. They were better than some of the players already enshrined. The exclusion sparked whispers of bias, frustration from teammates, and a growing sense of injustice among Raiders fans. This wasn't just about a plaque. It was about respect. Let's break it down. Branch's numbers were undeniable: 501 receptions, 8,685 yards, 67 touchdowns, and a ridiculous 17.3 yards per catch average. Compare that to Lynn Swann, the Pittsburgh Steelers legend inducted in 2001. Swann had 336 catches, 5,462 yards, and 51 touchdowns. Solid. But Branch outdid him by 165 receptions, over 3,000 yards, and 16 touchdowns. Yet Swann got the call to Canton, while Branch was left waiting. Another contemporary, John Stallworth, also a Steeler, was inducted in 2002 with 537 catches and 8,723 yards, numbers nearly identical to Branch's. The pattern was clear. Players with similar or lesser stats were getting in, but Cliff was stuck on the outside. So, what was the problem? Some pointed to an anti-Raiders bias tied to the team's rebellious image and owner Al Davis's battles with the NFL establishment. The Raiders were the league's bad boys, black jerseys, rowdy fans, and a just-win-baby attitude that rubbed the old guard the wrong way. Davis's legal fights, like suing the NFL over the team's 1982 move to Los Angeles, didn't win him friends among Hall voters. Some voters argued Branch's regular season stats, while elite, didn't dominate in an era of high-flying offenses. But that excuse felt flimsy when his playoff performances, 1,289 yards, 5 touchdown catches in title games, were record-setting. Branch wasn't invisible. He was a semifinalist for the Hall in 2004 and again in 2010. Each time, Raiders Nation held its breath, hoping his name would finally be called. Each time, the door slammed shut. Teammates were livid. Hall of Famer Charles Woodson called it a travesty, saying Branch's exclusion was one of the biggest wrongs in football. Marcus Allen, another Canton inductee, went further, labeling it a disgrace that his teammate wasn't honored. Coach Tom Flores, himself a Hall of Famer, said if he could pick one Raider for Canton, it'd be Branch, no question. The support wasn't just talk, it was a roar from those who knew Cliff's greatness best. Fans felt the sting, too. Raiders Nation, known for their fierce loyalty, started buzzing about the snub on message boards and at tailgates. One fan recalled meeting Branch at a charity event in the late 2000s, where he signed a jersey and said, "Maybe one day they'll let me in." His smile hid the hurt, but those close to him knew the weight was eating at him. The Hall's senior committee, tasked with evaluating older players, kept passing him over, and no one could pinpoint why. Was it politics, bias, or just a refusal to see what Branch brought to the game? The snub wasn't just a personal blow, it was a mystery that fueled speculation. Some wondered if Branch's role as a deep threat, reliant on big plays rather than gaudy catch totals, made voters overlook him. Others believed the Raiders' reputation as outsiders cast a shadow over their stars. Whatever the reason, the clock was ticking, and Cliff was running out of time to hear his name in Canton. The Raiders and their fans weren't about to give up, but would their fight be enough? That's where the story takes a bold turn. The battle for recognition. The Pro Football Hall of Fame had ignored Cliff Branch for years, leaving his legacy in limbo despite his dazzling stats and 3 Super Bowl rings. But the Raiders and their fiercely loyal fans weren't about to let their hero fade into obscurity. A movement was born, one that would rally teammates, legends, and an entire fan base to demand justice for their Speed King. This wasn't just a campaign. It was a battle cry called Cliff to Canton. With time running out, the fight for Branch's rightful place in Canton became a testament to his impact, both on and off the field. Would it be enough to change the Hall's mind? The Cliff to Canton campaign kicked off in earnest in the 2010s, driven by the Raiders organization and fueled by a groundswell of support from Raiders Nation. The team didn't just want Branch in the Hall, they needed him there, a symbol of their gritty underdog spirit. The campaign wasn't subtle. It included slick highlight reels of Branch's blazing runs, heartfelt testimonials from teammates, and open letters to the Hall's voters. One video featured Branch's 60-yard touchdown against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the 1972 playoffs. A play so iconic, it's still studied by coaches today. The message was clear. This man wasn't just a player, he was a pioneer who deserved his gold jacket. Teammates stepped up with a vengeance. Hall of Famer Charles Woodson, a Raiders icon himself, called Branch's exclusion criminal, arguing that his stats and impact were undeniable. Marcus Allen, another Canton inductee, was even more blunt, saying the snub was a disgrace that tarnished the Hall's credibility. Coach Tom Flores, enshrined in 2021, went on record saying Branch was his top pick for the next Raider in Canton, no question. These weren't just opinions. They were pleas from men who'd seen Branch's greatness up close. who knew the fire he brought to every play. Their voices carried weight, and fans were listening. Raiders Nation took the fight to the next level. On social media, the hashtag #CliffToCanton trended as fans shared stories of Branch's brilliance and humility. One fan recalled meeting Branch at a 2015 charity golf event, where he spent an hour signing autographs and tossing mini footballs to kids, grinning like he was still in the end zone. Another shared a photo of Branch buying dinner for a group of fans at an Oakland diner, refusing to let them pay. These stories painted a picture of a man who wasn't just a star, but a role model, someone who embodied the Raiders' silver and black soul. The campaign wasn't just about stats, it was about honoring a man who'd given everything to the game. The Raiders' front office doubled down, leveraging their platform to keep Branch's name in the spotlight. Owner Mark Davis, a lifelong friend of Branch, personally championed the cause, speaking at events and lobbying Hall voters. The team produced a documentary short, Speed Kills: The Cliff Branch Story, highlighting his career and the injustice of his exclusion. Clips from the film went viral, racking up millions of views and sparking debates among NFL analysts. Even national media started to take notice, with ESPN and NFL Network running segments questioning why Branch wasn't in Canton. The pressure was mounting, and the Hall couldn't ignore it forever. Branch himself stayed hopeful, even as the years dragged on. In 2019, he told his sister Elaine Anderson, "It's either this year or next. I can feel it." His faith wasn't blind. The Hall was set to induct an expanded centennial class in 2020, with 10 spots for senior players like him. Branch was a finalist, closer to Canton than ever before. Friends said he carried himself with quiet confidence, still running 4.6-second 40-yard dashes at 70 and charming crowds at Raiders events. But time was a cruel opponent, one even Cliff's speed couldn't outrun. The Cliff to Canton campaign had lit a fire, but would it burn bright enough to bring him home? That's where the story takes a tragic twist. The ultimate challenge in life. The Cliff to Canton campaign had ignited hope, rallying Raiders fans and legends to demand Cliff Branch's place in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But just as the movement gained steam, life dealt Cliff a series of blows that tested even his unbreakable spirit. In his late 60s, Branch faced personal losses and challenges that would have broken a lesser man. From a devastating wildfire to the quiet pain of waiting for Canton's call, these years revealed the resilience behind his legendary speed. Yet through it all, he remained the same humble, generous soul who'd won the hearts of Raiders Nation. Would he hold on long enough to see his dream fulfilled? In October 2017, Branch's world turned upside down. The Tubbs wildfire, one of the most destructive in California history, tore through Santa Rosa, where Cliff had built a life after his NFL days. His house, filled with decades of memories, photos from his Raiders' glory, track medals from Colorado, letters from fans, was reduced to ashes. Cliff escaped with nothing but his 3 Super Bowl rings, clutching them as he fled the inferno. The loss was staggering. At 69, he was forced to start over, with no home, no keepsakes, just the shimmering symbols of his past triumphs. Fans who saw him shortly after said he looked shaken, but refused to dwell on the tragedy. Despite the setback, Branch's spirit stayed strong. At 69, he was still running 4.6-second 40-yard dashes at charity events, a feat that left younger athletes in awe. He'd show up at Raiders fan gatherings, signing autographs for hours and sharing stories of the old Oakland Coliseum days. One fan recalled Branch at a 2018 golf tournament, where he handed out mini footballs to kids and cracked jokes about outrunning defenders in his prime. His generosity never wavered. He'd quietly pay for strangers' meals at restaurants or spend time mentoring young players, urging them to stay humble. This was the Cliff Branch that Raiders Nation adored, a man who carried his losses with grace. But the wildfire wasn't the only weight on his shoulders. The Hall of Fame's continued silence gnawed at him, even if he rarely showed it. Friends said Cliff believed 2019 or 2020 would be his year, especially with the Hall's upcoming centennial class set to honor senior players. He'd tell his sister, Elaine Anderson, "I'm close, I can feel it," his voice tinged with cautious hope. The Cliff to Canton campaign kept his spirits high, with hashtag Cliff to Canton posts flooding X and Raiders events buzzing with his name. Yet the waiting game was a quiet torment, a reminder that time was slipping away. Branch's loyalty to the Raiders never faltered, even as life tested him. He was thrilled about the team's planned move to Las Vegas in 2020, dreaming of cheering from the stands in their new stadium. He'd talk about the silver and black with the same passion he had in the 70s, telling friends he'd bleed Raiders colors forever. At a 2019 fan event, he posed for photos with his Super Bowl rings, grinning as fans chanted, "Cliff to Canton." His optimism was infectious, but beneath it lay a truth he couldn't outrun. The Hall's call might not come in time. The stage was set for a heartbreaking twist, one that would leave Raiders Nation reeling. That's where the story turns dark. Heartbreaking ending, Cliff Branch had faced wildfires, snubs from the Hall of Fame, and the relentless march of time, yet his spirit burned as bright as ever. The Cliff to Canton camp again was at its peak, with Raiders Nation and NFL legends rallying for his long-overdue recognition. At 71, Cliff was still the same magnetic figure, running sprints, charming fans, and dreaming of the day his name would echo in Canton. But fate had a cruel twist in store, one that would silence his dream just as it seemed within reach. In a moment, the Raiders' Speed King would be gone, leaving a void that no campaign could fill. This is the heartbreaking end of Cliff Branch's race. On August 3, 2019, just 2 days after celebrating his 71st birthday, Cliff Branch was found lifeless in a hotel room in Bullhead City, Arizona. The official report cited natural causes, a quiet end for a man who'd lived so loudly on the field. The news hit like a thunderbolt. Raiders Nation, teammates, and friends were stunned, grappling with the loss of a man who seemed invincible. His sister, Elaine Anderson, later shared that Cliff had been in high spirits, talking about the Raiders' move to Las Vegas and his belief that Canton was near. He'd told her, "It's coming, Elaine. I know it." But that dream, so close, slipped away in an instant. The timing was nothing short of tragic. The Pro Football Hall of Fame was gearing up for its centennial class. In 2020, an expanded group with 10 spots for senior players like Branch. Cliff had been a finalist, his name whispered in voter meetings as a lock for induction. Some insiders said he was closer to Canton than ever, with the Cliff to Canton campaign swaying opinions. But the Hall's senior committee didn't act in time, and Branch's passing left a bitter question. Why hadn't they moved faster? Teammates like Charles Woodson took to X, writing, "We fought for him, but it's too late. This hurts." The Raiders organization was devastated. Owner Mark Davis, who'd known Cliff since childhood, called him the heart of the silver and black. Fans flooded the Oakland Coliseum with flowers, jerseys, and handwritten notes, turning the stadium into a shrine for their fallen prince. One note read, "You deserved Canton, Cliff. We'll never forget you." The #Cliff to Canton hashtag, once a beacon of hope, became a space for grief, with thousands sharing memories of Branch's electrifying plays and boundless kindness. A fan posted about meeting Cliff at a 2018 diner where he insisted on paying for their meal and said, "Stay loyal to the Raiders." Elaine Anderson's words cut deepest. She said Cliff would have cried tears of joy at a Hall of Fame induction, picturing him clutching his gold jacket with that signature grin. His death wasn't just a loss for his family, it was a loss for football, a reminder that even legends can be denied their moment. The centennial class went ahead in 2020, inducting players like Harold Carmichael and Donnie Shell, but Branch's name was absent. Fans on X erupted with posts like, "Canton failed Cliff Branch. This is a disgrace." The anger was raw, the pain palpable. Cliff's final days painted a picture of a man at peace, yet yearning. He'd spent his last months traveling to Raiders events, signing autographs, and talking about the team's future in Las Vegas. Friends said he was still running sprints, joking that he could outrace half the NFL at 71. But beneath the laughter, the hall's silence weighed heavy. His death marked the end of a chapter, but not the end of his story. Would Canton ever make things right? The answer was coming, but it would carry a bittersweet sting. That's where the story finds hope. Delayed justice Cliff Branch's sudden passing in 2019 left Raiders Nation heartbroken, his dream of a Hall of Fame induction unfulfilled. The Cliff to Canton campaign, once a beacon of hope, seemed to flicker out with his loss. But the fight for his legacy wasn't over. 3 years later, a long overdue moment of justice arrived, proving that even in death, Cliff Branch's brilliance could not be ignored. This was the bittersweet chapter, where Canton finally called his name, but the joy was tempered by the absence of the man who deserved to hear it most. Let's uncover how Cliff's story found its rightful end. In August 2022, the Pro Football Hall of Fame made it official. Cliff Branch was an inductee, enshrined as part of the class of 2022. The announcement sent waves through the NFL, with Raiders fans erupting in cheers and tears. The ceremony was a moment of triumph, led by Cliff's sister, Elaine Anderson, and Raiders owner Mark Davis, who'd been his friend since their youth. Elaine took the stage with a heart full of pride and pain, presenting her brother's legacy to the world. She read an open letter to Cliff, imagining his words, "Thank you, God. Thank you, Mama and Dad. I made it." Her voice cracked as she spoke, and the crowd felt the weight of a moment that came too late. The hall didn't stop at the induction. In a rare move, they changed their policy to ensure Branch's family received his Ring of Excellence, a shimmering symbol of his place among the immortals. The ring, engraved with Cliff's name, was more than jewelry. It was proof that his contributions mattered, that his speed and heart had reshaped football. Mark Davis, standing beside Elaine, called it the honor Cliff deserved all along, his voice thick with emotion. The ceremony closed with a standing ovation as fans in Raiders jerseys waved signs reading, "Speed kills, Canton heals." The induction wasn't just a win for Branch, it was a victory for every player who'd been overlooked, every underdog who'd fought for respect. Teammates like Charles Woodson and Marcus Allen took to X writing, "Cliff's in. It's right, but it hurts he's not here." NFL analysts praised the decision, with ESPN calling Branch a pioneer whose exclusion was inexplicable. The Cliff to Canton campaign, fueled by years of fan passion, was credited with tipping the scales. Elaine later shared that Cliff's spirit was in the room, his grin lighting up Canton even if his body wasn't. She said their family's blood had turned silver and black the day Cliff became a Raider, and that bond carried them through. But the joy was laced with sorrow. Cliff had waited decades for this moment, only to miss it by 3 years. Fans on X voiced their frustration with posts like, "Canton waited too long, Cliff should have seen this." The induction was justice, but it was a reminder of what could have been, a living legend celebrating his legacy. Yet in that pain, there was pride. Cliff Branch, the kid from Sunnyside who outran the world, was finally where he belonged. Cliff Branch's life was a sprint, fast, thrilling, and unforgettable. From Houston foot races to 3 Super Bowl rings, he redefined what a receiver could be, blazing a trail for today's stars like Tyreek Hill and Jamar Chase. His loyalty to the Raiders, his humility, his heart, they were as legendary as his speed. Yet the Hall of Fame's delay left a scar, a reminder that greatness is sometimes honored too late. Why do we wait to celebrate those who changed the game? This story isn't just about Cliff. It's about recognizing the heroes among us before their race is run. Share your thoughts below, and let's keep Cliff Branch's legacy alive.